Miss Marvel gets a brand new #1 and a new direction. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is going to be an irate review, and we're going to be talking about the magnificent Miss Marvel #1, written by Saladin Ahmed. So Willow Wilson's run has concluded at issue number 37 or 38, and overall it has been fantastic for people that are fans of Miss Marvel, but we've got a brand new creative team and a brand new creative direction, so let's dive in and see what Miss Marvel has for us.
I will be the first to admit that I don't know nearly enough about Kamala Khan, and I have to review Willow Wilson's run because everybody says that it's amazing. But we're going to focus on Saladin Ahmed and team's new issue of Magnificent Miss Marvel #1. And this starts in a really interesting way because we're not even on the planet Earth. We see a parent talking to their child, an alien parent talking to their child, and telling a story about the Destined One. And we see the familiar lightning bolt on Miss Marvel's chest. This is, of course, before we see her in conflict with the Deathbringer in the middle of the city streets of New Jersey. And complemented by this voiceover, we get a variety of different interactions. The way that the story is being told, Miss Marvel is this pinnacle, this great hero that never does anything wrong. However, what she does in reality is completely different. You know, she does shrink herself, she does grow larger, she does handle these various villainous threats, and she always tries to, well, do the right thing, but she's not necessarily one that's respected or thought highly of by her hometown. So the contrast between the perception of this alien race far into the future and what the reality of Miss Marvel is a real clear contrast that Saladin Ahmed is trying to put together. He's trying to make us think about what she does now versus how it will be perceived in the future. And as we move through this, the change in colors from this kind of cool look on the outside with the bright vibrance of Miss Marvel's costume to this very warm interior of this Lebanese juice bar, it's a really cool kind of contrast, and I'm really digging the art style, which is helping bring me into the world that they're creating around Miss Marvel. Now she's eating with Nakia, and she's relaying the information regarding her actual origin story, who she is, what she did, how she became Miss Marvel, which is a great entry point for people that aren't necessarily familiar with the character. It gives you just enough backstory to understand exactly what happened and how maybe she was perceived earlier on in her career, especially by her friend Nakia, who thought that maybe she wasn't the best thing for Jersey City. But this nice little meeting is cut short as she remembers that she has to go home, and that's where a little bit more tension kind of rises. While she's always remembered as having respect for the people inside her household, we see Ami and Abu, and the big problem is that now they know, or at least Abu knows, that Miss Marvel and Kamala Khan are the same person. And what comes immediately after in this 9-panel grid is actually something you'd expect from a teenager become hero and how they're confronted by their parents. Ami is of course outraged that she was made a liar by Kamala, and Kamala is the defiant teenager raised in this kind of independent society where she is a hero. And the change in color of the various faces of the characters, when Ami's mad, her face gets a little bit more red. When Kamala is stealing her resolve, the background goes a little bit yellow and her face gets a little bit more red as well, as the emotions kind of well up. And then in the final panel where we see Abu telling Kamala that she gives far too much, you know, she's got such a giving heart, but how many times has she almost died? You can feel the passion in that kind of magenta color of the background. And this carries on throughout the conversation. This phenomenal explanation that comes from Abu about what it means to be a parent and how he felt in a situation when he didn't know that Kamala would come through it. He thought that she was going to die when she was just a baby, you know, a young little girl coughing. He just prayed and prayed, never knowing whether the sounds that were coming out of her mouth were going to be the last. Even though he is not a hero, even though he does not have powers, he has to protect his daughter. And that is final. There are going to be no arguments about this. She is going to stop being a hero immediately. And that, of course, sends Kamala, this very defined individual that is idealistic and looking to the future. She goes running outside. She immediately gets a text from Bruno, and there's monsters afoot. So in defiance of her parents' wishes, she heads off to defend her friend. And that's where we get a really good splash page, a singular page. We've got this kind of mace-wielding wolfman from space that seems to be attacking Bruno while he's at work. And the battle, though dynamic in the art style, is actually relatively short-lived. She grabs the monster, throws him into a wall, and he starts to ooze into this puddle at the base of her feet. There's a giant winged birdman down at the waterfront, and another thing happens where she just embiggens herself. She turns herself into these meat tenderizers and then just smashes this thing as it tries to attack her friend again. And more ooze. It's really odd. Bruno is kind of taking a look at this. He thinks that the cellular structure isn't quite what it's supposed to be, but the final alert's coming through, and it's coming from Kamala's house. So immediately after leaving her parents in the kind of state that she left them in, without this kind of resolution, she has to run as quickly as she possibly can back home. And big and running through Jersey City, she scales down, hops in through the door, and finds her parents kind of hiding in the shadows. And the ominous nature of the art gives us an idea that something with these two is not quite right. While we did have a very warm scene earlier on in the book with them, this is dark, it's cold, it's distant, and as she hugs them, finding that things are okay, things are most definitely not okay as they start to descend into the same kind of pooled blue liquid that we saw from the villains earlier. And that's where Saladin Ahmed is going to take the Miss Marvel character. We already have the understanding that at some point in time, she is going to have to head into space. And by introducing these various aspects, these various monsters that seem to be extraterrestrial, and then involving her family in it, we get a lot more emotional involvement from Kamala Khan as a character. I have no doubt that in Magnificent Miss Marvel #2, we're going to get a lot more information on exactly what these beings are, where her family is, and how she's going to be able to impact this. But the idea that Saladin Ahmed is going to be taking this really street-level hero into a bit more cosmic space is a lot of growth for the character, and I'm really excited to see where that is. As for the art style, I just loved everything about it. The use of color, the way that the characters are rendered. I feel like it's a really good representation of how emotions are really going to be felt, the way the interior atmospheres are going to be set up, and it carries a lot of weight with it other than just the rendering of characters and the actual action and dynamics of it. I think that this is going to be a really good book for people to watch. If you're not a fan of Miss Marvel, or you've never read the Miss Marvel character Kamala Khan, this is a great intro. But I want to know what you guys think, so hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books and more.